Something is changing around Meghan Markle, and this time, the story isn't coming from the royal family. It's coming from the people and places that were supposed to represent her new life in America. Jamie Kern Lima, once publicly warm toward Meghan, has suddenly become part of a friendship mystery. Meghan's birthday became notable for the absence of several major celebrity names. David Foster was pulled into an awkward red carpet controversy. Martha Stewart's comments about a California dinner created another round of headlines. And now, attention has turned toward the Montecito mansion that was supposed to symbolize Harry and Meghan's California success. There is no confirmed evidence that everyone has turned against Meghan, and there is no confirmed public listing proving the mansion is for sale. But when several unrelated stories begin pointing toward the same question, people start paying attention. Is Meghan Markle's Hollywood circle actually shrinking? Or are we watching a series of coincidences being turned into one enormous story? Today, we're separating the facts, the speculation, and the pattern connecting them. Or are we watching a series of coincidences being turned into one enormous story? Today, we're separating the facts, the speculation, and the pattern connecting them. The most interesting part of this story may not be the celebrity who allegedly ignored Meghan on a red carpet. It may be the friend who didn't say anything at all. Jamie Kern Lima had previously been publicly affectionate toward Meghan, making the friendship part of the broader picture of Meghan's American social world. Then came a noticeable change in the public conversation. Jamie began sharing material about narcissistic behavior and difficult relationships, including a post asking whether someone in your life might be a narcissist. The timing immediately attracted attention because it happened around the same period as Meghan's birthday. That is where the speculation begins, but it is also where we need to be careful. Jamie did not publicly say that Meghan was the person she was talking about. There was no direct announcement of a friendship breakup. So the post itself cannot establish that Meghan and Jamie had a falling out. What it did create was a question. Why was someone once publicly close to Meghan suddenly being discussed in connection with posts about difficult relationships? That question became even louder because Jamie was only one part of a much bigger conversation surrounding Meghan's birthday. The birthday itself became unusual for another reason. Instead of an obvious A-list celebration dominating the headlines, attention turned toward the famous names who were not publicly visible. The transcript points specifically to Serena Williams, Beyoncé, the Kardashians, and Abigail Spencer, while also noting that Kelly Zapin and Tracy Robbins were among those who did publicly acknowledge Meghan. Now, a celebrity not posting a birthday message is not proof of a broken friendship. People communicate privately, some deliberately stay off social media, and public posts are not a reliable friendship scoreboard. But in Meghan's case, those absences became part of the story because her public image has long been connected to famous friendships and high-profile social circles. That distinction matters. The question isn't whether Meghan has friends. The evidence certainly doesn't support saying that she has been left with nobody. The question is whether some of the most recognizable names associated with her public image are becoming less visible. That is a narrower claim, but it is also the reason the birthday attracted so much attention. A single missing birthday post means almost nothing. A collection of missing names creates a conversation. The Kardashian angle adds another layer. Harry and Meghan had already attracted attention around Kris Jenner's major birthday celebration, where their own appearance became part of the media conversation. The Sussexes' presence generated photos, arrival questions, and additional attention around an event that was supposed to center on Jenner. Whether that affected future relationships cannot be established from the transcript, but it illustrates an important reality of celebrity culture. When a famous person's appearance becomes bigger news than the event itself, the people involved may become more cautious about future public interactions. A completely different dynamic emerged around David Foster. A short red carpet interaction involving Meghan and Foster became the subject of speculation that he had deliberately ignored or snubbed her. The moment spread because it was easy to interpret visually. A few seconds of body language can be turned into an entire narrative online. But Foster's response complicated that interpretation. He said he had already greeted Harry and Meghan earlier and described them as dear friends. So the available material does not establish that the moment was an intentional snub. What makes the Foster incident useful to this story isn't proving that he rejected Meghan. It is showing how quickly an ordinary celebrity interaction can become a controversy. The original event can disappear behind the debate over one clip. People begin discussing what someone looked like, where they stood, whether they made eye contact, and what that supposedly means. Then a response becomes necessary, which creates another headline. And suddenly, a few seconds at a public event have become a multi-day discussion. The Martha Stewart story takes yet another direction. According to the transcript, Stewart discussed a California dinner where Meghan was present and described Meghan talking about her European trip and the palace. The comments then became controversial because there was disagreement over what Meghan had actually said and how Stewart's account should be interpreted. Again, we should not turn a disputed account into an established fact. What matters for this video is the reaction. Another private social interaction became public entertainment, with people debating what was said, what was meant, and who should be believed. These examples are different, and that is exactly why they shouldn't all be treated as evidence of the same thing. Jamie is about silence. The birthday is about absence. David Foster is about interpretation. Martha Stewart is about disputed recollection, but they all have one thing in common. The conversation around Meghan keeps moving away from what she is trying to present and toward the people surrounding her. That's a subtle but important shift. When a celebrity has a strong public circle, the people around them can reinforce the image. A famous friend appears, and the audience sees success. A major celebrity attends an event, and the audience sees influence. A photograph with the right person can communicate more than a paragraph of publicity ever could. But when those people become less visible, the audience starts looking at the empty spaces instead. This is also why the phrase Hollywood has dumped Meghan goes too far. The available material doesn't prove that. It doesn't establish that Jamie ended the friendship. It doesn't establish that Serena Williams or Beyoncé privately rejected Meghan. It doesn't establish that the Kardashians have cut ties. And David Foster's own explanation directly pushes against the idea that he was intentionally snubbing Harry and Meghan. A responsible story has to acknowledge that. There is still a legitimate story underneath the dramatic headline. Meghan's public celebrity network is being scrutinized more closely than before. That's because the most visible evidence of celebrity support is exactly that: visibility. If someone doesn't post, doesn't appear, doesn't attend, or doesn't publicly interact, the audience cannot see what is happening privately. And the absence itself becomes open to interpretation. That is where the Montecito mansion enters the story. For Harry and Meghan, Montecito was more than a place to live. It became part of the image of their post-royal life. They had left Britain, stepped away from royal duties, moved to California, and established a home that represented privacy, independence, and a new beginning. So when speculation about the property's future appears, people naturally connect it to the larger story. But this is one area where the distinction between rumor and fact is especially important. The transcript discusses speculation that Harry and Meghan could be quietly testing the waters around a possible sale, including renewed attention to the property on real estate platforms. But it explicitly acknowledges that there is no confirmed public listing proving the mansion is for sale. So the headline should not be treated as a confirmed property transaction. The interesting part is the symbolism. If the Montecito mansion represented the success of Meghan and Harry's American reinvention, then even speculation about selling it naturally becomes part of the conversation about whether that chapter is changing. It doesn't prove they're moving. It doesn't prove financial difficulty. It doesn't prove that the property has been listed. It simply creates another question at exactly the moment when questions about their celebrity relationships are already circulating. The transcript also introduces reports that Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce were looking at property in Montecito. That does not mean Taylor and Travis are replacing Harry and Meghan, and it does not establish any neighborhood conflict. But symbolically, the contrast is easy for audiences to understand. One celebrity couple is associated with the next generation of enormous American celebrity power, while another couple is facing renewed speculation about the stability of the image they built in the same community. That contrast is probably more important for the narrative than the house rumor itself. Because Meghan's American reinvention has always been about more than a house. It was about proving that life after the royal family could be bigger, freer, and more influential. Hollywood connections helped communicate that. Major events helped communicate it. Celebrity friendships helped communicate it. Montecito helped communicate it. The entire picture worked together. So when individual pieces of that picture become quieter, people start asking whether the larger image is changing. The birthday is a good example. The story isn't simply that certain celebrities didn't post. The story is that the public was expecting to see a recognizable network of support, and instead the conversation became about who wasn't visible. That changes the emotional impact of the event. A birthday should be about celebration. Suddenly, it becomes a test of social influence. Jamie Kern Lima creates a similar effect, but through a different mechanism. She doesn't publicly accuse Meghan. Instead, her silence and unrelated social media content became something people interpreted through the lens of their previous friendship. That shows how closely the public now watches Meghan's relationships. Even when someone doesn't mention her, people can still connect the dots. David Foster demonstrates another problem: interpretation. A moment can be completely innocent and still become controversial because viewers assign meaning to it. Foster's explanation may be accurate. The clip may have been nothing, but once the clip is circulating, the narrative becomes difficult to control. Martha Stewart demonstrates yet another problem: competing versions of a conversation. A casual dinner becomes a public dispute about what was said. The original conversation may have lasted minutes. The online debate can last days. Those are 4 different mechanisms producing the same result. Meghan's relationships become the story. And that may be more significant than whether any particular friendship has actually ended. Celebrity relationships are valuable partly because of what they communicate publicly. When that communication becomes complicated, everyone involved has a reason to become more careful. Not necessarily because they dislike each other, but because nobody wants a harmless interaction turned into another headline. Jamie shows what happens when there is silence. The birthday shows what happens when expected public support isn't visible. David Foster shows what happens when a few seconds of footage become a controversy. Martha Stewart shows what happens when a private conversation becomes a public disagreement. And Montecito shows what happens when even the home representing the new life becomes part of the speculation. That is the progression. Not one giant Hollywood rejection, a series of smaller questions. And that distinction makes the story much stronger. Because if the claim were simply that Meghan has been dumped by Hollywood, the evidence would be far too thin. But if the question is whether the public image of Meghan's celebrity network has become less secure, there is clearly something to discuss. The most revealing point in the original material is that Meghan can control her photographs, her social media, her products, and how she presents her life. But she cannot force another celebrity to post, attend an event, or publicly praise her. That's the heart of the story. A public image can be carefully managed, but it cannot be completely controlled. You can release the perfect birthday photograph. You can smile on a red carpet. You can show the beautiful home. You can highlight the successful project, but you cannot manufacture another person's public enthusiasm. And when the audience begins looking at who is missing rather than who is present, the strategy becomes much harder. That's why the Montecito speculation matters symbolically, even if it turns out to be completely false. If the house remains theirs for years, the rumor will eventually disappear. But if questions about the property continue, while the celebrity circle remains quieter, the two stories will continue reinforcing each other in the public imagination. The same applies to the friendships. If Jamie suddenly appears with Meghan again, the speculation may disappear. If Serena or Beyoncé publicly celebrate Meghan, people will have new information. If Abigail Spencer returns to the same level of public enthusiasm she previously showed, the narrative changes. If David Foster continues treating Harry and Meghan as friends, his own explanation becomes the dominant version of the red carpet story. In other words, the situation is not settled. And that's precisely why it is interesting. At this point, the smartest conclusion isn't that Meghan has lost Hollywood. It is that her public image of Hollywood acceptance is being tested. Those are two very different things. A private friendship can remain perfectly healthy while becoming less visible. A celebrity can still like Meghan while choosing not to post about her. A red carpet moment can look awkward without being a deliberate snub. A dinner story can be remembered differently by different people. And a house can receive real estate attention without actually being for sale. All of those possibilities can exist at the same time. But audiences don't always see the private explanation. They see